I got to take a minute and brag on my sister-in-law, Carrie Kirsch, over at Kirsch Design Company. Check them out, kirschdesign.com. She's a go-getter. She has a talent for fixing spaces up. It's a passion, really. So I want to recommend her to you. If you have any of those needs for yourself, your office, your house, your parents' house, look them up, kirschdesign.com. Okay, TCB Nation, here we go. We got Clint Tunnel in the house, and I don't know Clint well. It's not like we are buddies that hang out on the weekends or anything, but I know him well enough to know he's got a servant's heart. He's interesting to me in a lot of ways. He's experiencing today now some stuff I've got coming in my future.
Mm-hmm.
So this makes this conversation really valuable to me. I think it'll be valuable to anybody that takes the time to listen to it. So Clint, thanks so much for coming in, and we will explore your story.
Sure.
That's
Glad to be here. No better place to be on a Friday morning in June with 150% humidity outside.
We're sitting in the AC.
That's right. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, you bet. Well, it's not easy to get out of a busy schedule and really carve an hour out to just sit down and talk. But it's really valuable to me, to this show, for people to do that. So thanks. Did I get that name right? Clint Tunnel?
You got it right. You just didn't add the D between Clint and Tunnel. That's all.
All right. Good deal. So what's that D all about?
Oh, that D stands for Daniel, but I learned long ago that when a person adds their middle initial to their name, that just gives a bit of confidence level.
Oh,
and so
there you
that's
go.
where the D comes from. Yep.
There's several people that do that.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I've never thought about it that way. This, like, immediately, we're right to the value. There's something valuable there. People can hear that. How do you want to represent yourself in life?
Right.
I wanted to say business, but it's really life, because business is only a part of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
You want to represent yourself. It's valuable. Why do you care to sound confident?
Well, I think in business, to set yourself apart, you have to be confident. There is a fine line, a very fine line between confidence and arrogance, and you have to learn that line. And it's represented to people, all people differently. So you kind of have to know how close to the line you can get. You got to have a little
emotional intelligence right along with that confidence.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, if you hire somebody to come do something for you and they don't seem confident when they show up, is that who you want? So. But on the flip side of that, if they show up and are a little bit arrogant, is that who you want as well?
Yeah,
so I think confidence goes a long way. I think it goes a long way in life, period, not just in business by any means. So,
can you fake it?
No, you can fake it up to the point to where you have to prove it.
Yeah, right.
So if you can't back it up, it's probably best not to be confident.
Yeah.
So.
I agree with that so much. I think confidence is earned. It's not a thing you can. Now, sometimes, like I've started trying to get my pilot's license.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not confident in the plane.
Sure.
I need the time to get confident. But to get in the cockpit the first time, I had to pretend confidence.
Absolutely.
I had to pretend like I'm going to be good enough to do this. Then now I'm starting to get some real confidence now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to say, oh, I've done this by myself.
Yeah.
Nobody told me anything. I can do this.
A little mind over matter.
Yeah. So for anybody listening, young kids, my daughters, if it happens to be y'all someday, Beck, whoever's listening, some of this is good thought processes to have. Well, you can't just open your eyes and say, I'm confident.
Right.
You have to go prove that a little bit.
And being confident doesn't mean that you just automatically know everything or know how to do everything. It just means that you're confident in yourself, that you're at least able to learn it, try it, and you may not be good at it. So, but being confident and able to try, knowing, hey, I can try this. I can, it may work, it may not, but at least if it doesn't, I tried.
Oh man, you said a key thing there. It's like such a yeehaw moment. Like, David, if you have that audio, you got to splice in a little yeehaw right here, because
yeehaw!
layered in what Clint just said is it might fail. And you have the ability to recover from that. Like that is
absolutely.
part of confidence.
The best business people, the best people in life, period, I think are failures. You know, I pride myself on most all of my failures. Some of them were not that great failures, and I probably should have done it different or not even tried it. But I think your most confident and successful people in life truly are failures. You know,
they're the fastest get-uppers.
Yeah, you have to. You know,
I think that's the truth. Like the real winners, the real successful people, whatever you want to judge those metrics on, are the fastest get-uppers.
Yeah.
Like when they fall down, bam, they're right back up.
Well, you know, Carter, our oldest son, had graduated a couple of weeks ago, and we just finished the A&M registration process yesterday. And a conversation we had a couple of months ago, or maybe longer, was about failure. You know, and my comment to him was, "You failed. So what? What's next?"
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you find a person that hasn't failed, what have they done? In all honesty, and you know, it kind of goes to something my grandmother used to always tell me, and I hope we can say this on the podcast. They can edit it if not, but you know, in life and whether it's community service or business or just life in general, my grandmother used to always say, if you're not pissing anybody off, you're probably not doing anything. And it's the same way with someone's ability to fail. You have to be able to put yourself out there in the off chance that you may fail at it.
Yeah.
But did you learn from it? But on the other side, what if you're successful at it? What's the best thing you ever did? You know, and you have huge success from it. So failure is very important in life, I think.
Yep. It's about, I think about it a lot. I'm no expert. Like I'm not the world's foremost expert on mental, I don't know, preparation or just how you spend your days framing your life in your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about it a lot because I think it's very key to me being able to grab for, run towards my highest potential. I don't even know what that is, but I want to go at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is understanding. Like when I was roping calves, this is just in my 20s. It was either world champion, I suck.
Mm-hmm.
That was the two options.
Yeah.
There weren't any other in between there. Now I'm a little older. I'm like, I was really good. I was really good.
Right.
Now, I wasn't a world champion. I never made the NFR. I wasn't in the top 50 best, but I was still really good. So if I could have saw that then, I'm hoping people are listening to this, somebody in this similar maybe age group or piece of their life, and they're thinking, president of the company, owning my own company. That's the only way I'm successful.
Right.
Wrong. Don't think about it like that because I was really good, but since I wasn't world champion, all I played in my head all the time was I suck.
Definitely. I think we're always our own worst enemies, our own worst critics. I mean, which you need to be to a level. I mean, you need to compete with yourself. Competing with others, I have a pretty strong opinion on that. I'm not one that really competes with anybody. Never have been. That's probably why athletics through school was not my deal because I wasn't ever in competition with anybody other than myself. And I put a lot of, probably more pressure than I should have on myself towards perfection. And the older I get, the more I realize perfection doesn't really get you any further down the road than non-perfection. But we are our own worst critics, which I think hinders a lot of people and stops a lot of people from doing those things that they later in life wish they would have.
Yeah, you bet.
So
this is just information. It's a good way to think about it. I can't tell you if you do this, it'll work because everybody's so different. Like, and I had to grow up. I had a whole different experience of just life. So it's going to be different from me than anybody else. All right. So we just dove right into.
We did pretty deep real quick.
Yeah. And I love that. That's value early on in the conversation, but I want people to so where did you come from? Tell me a little bit about your family. You mentioned your grandmother. All that stuff to me is your cowboy perspective, really, because that's where all these mindsets come from.
Sure.
And before I forget this, I want to ask, where do you think that not competing against others came from in your personality, right? Because I'm very likely and very tended towards competing with others.
Mhm.
I mean, that's kind of just what.
Yeah. I think that it just came from my upbringing. I tell you that, you know, I was born at a very early age, a very old man. That's kinda how I've always looked at life now looking back. You know, I was a very odd kid evidently when I was, you know, I just did
Yeah.
not go the ways that everyone else did and never had the desire to. That was what was crazy, and my parents, you know, God bless them, I'm sure they scratched their heads at night when they went to bed and said, "Who is this kid?" You know,
Yeah.
he's not like the rest of us. He's not like the rest of them. But the things that the world had going on all through my life, they just didn't interest me. I had my own path, my own thing that I wanted to do, and my parents were very supportive of that, and and so I never lost that drive to be my own person and do my own thing. Um, anyways, I was born at Blanket, raised at Blanket. My family had settled there in 1874, and I think that has always been a big thing that I'm proud of is that family heritage. I mean, your family is much the same
Yeah, you
over in
bet.
this
I'm
part of the
proud
world.
of it.
You know, the tunnel side of my family came here in the 1860s. The Mackenzie side came in the 1850s. You know, uh, my three great grandfather here in Comanche County was him and his brother Kenneth were the first to register cattle brand here in the county in 1856. Uh, and so there's just a lot of heritage
Yeah.
and family pride in that. And then they were down in the Mercer's Gap area, and then just kind of migrated to the west a little bit, Antioch and then Blanket area. So we just been there a long time.
If
And
you know these places Clint's mentioning, you have to be from this area.
yes, I don't think Google has them. I don't think
Yeah,
that may be the one
right.
thing that Google doesn't have at this point, or these places.
But I know
So
these places because I grew
yeah,
up in right out there. I was took home to Mercer's Gap,
hmm
Texas. So my parents are going to be buried in the Mercer's Gap
yeah.
Cemetery. So I'm connected closely to
My
these
great
places
grandparents are buried there.
there you
Yeah.
go. That's going to be some stuff I want to talk about.
Mhm.
For anybody who might not be from Comanche, Texas, small town America, you're listening to this and you grew up in just a way different, more urban setting.
Mhm.
We're talking about just little, maybe even crossroads on the map. Some Mercer's Gap. It's just the gap of a mountain. Like
Mhm.
this is just painting a picture of rural uh, history, heritage, and how that's kind of important to
Right.
us.
Well, a lot of those back in that time were, if you look, you know, are located within a 2 or 3 mile walking distance of the settlers and locations back in that day, where those kids could walk to a single schoolhouse
Yeah.
in a day. You know,
That's
so
what
that's where
made
they
a
would
lot
set
of
the
these
town.
communities was the little
Yeah,
schoolhouse.
because I mean, I can think of probably 3 other, Sand Hill and other places like that between Mercer's Gap and Blanket,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
that had schools,
You
but,
bet.
right there on the Brown Comanche County line. So, yeah, that's kinda how those got started. So
All right. So the next string that's just seems that I want to pull on is how do you pronounce a last name Eoff?
you pronounce that last name Oaf.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you that here I am 43 going on 44 years old, and I just learned this a couple of months ago by a lady here in town that when a surname starts with a double vowel, you take the long sound of the second vowel.
That's the first sound. Oaf.
Did you know that?
I didn't know
I
that.
didn't know
I
that
didn't have
either.
any clue.
How'd we get through life not
I
knowing
knew
that?
how to say oaf way before I knew how to spell it.
Yeah,
You
right,
know?
right.
Now, so my question is, did you know, have you known Drew Oaf?
Oh, yeah. Drew, there's a lot of close connection to Drew because Drew was the first grandson of my great grandparents,
All right.
James Alexander and Gipsy Denora Oaf.
Yeah.
And so my dad is the youngest grandson of James Alexander. So Drew's dad and my grandmother were brother and sister.
All right, all right.
And just to extend on that a little bit, Drew, my dad's dad passed away when my dad was 15, and Dad went on the harvest with Drew forever, from teenager through high school and on and on. And so after my grandfather passed away, Drew pretty well took my dad under his wing, and so Drew was pretty much a father figure to my dad up until Drew passed away.
Yeah,
and so. And there's some other history attached to Drew and his family. His wife, Martha. Did you know Martha very well?
I'll tell my story about Drew in a minute, but you can keep. I didn't know Martha.
Martha, his wife, was H.O. Kelly's daughter. And I don't know if you're familiar with H.O. Kelly, but H.O. Kelly was a folk artist in a sense. In his time, he died in the 50s, but he was a world-renowned artist. And matter of fact, his collection is on display in the, I don't remember which one of the art galleries. They're on the A&M campus.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
did y'all go see that?
We didn't have time this time around, but I will. But what was interesting is H.O. Kelly was so well known and is well known and a highly sought after collector. But H.O. Kelly, when he was in Blanket, Drew's two sons, Harold and Clifford, which are cousins too, obviously. But when their classmates and their friends at that age were all in high school and graduating high school, H.O. would paint them a graduation gift.
Oh, cool.
It would be a painting of some kind. Most all of H.O. Kelly's paintings, if you look at them, you'll find two boys in it, which are to represent Harold and Clifford.
Oh, really?
And he has a very unique style of art. But so there's a lot of Blanket people in that older generation. Of course, they're all in their 80s now, that would have an original H.O. Kelly that he painted for them for graduation or whatever. So, yeah.
Hey, David, let's put a little link to some of those. If we can find some of H.O. Kelly's artwork or even Wikipedia or something, let's just put a little link in the show notes for the listeners. I knew Drew Ove.
Mm-hmm.
I might could tell you if he walked in the door, but not what. I'd be a little shaky. Just kind of, he was a big guy from.
Yes, he was.
I have a picture in my head. So, but my dad told me stories. Like Drew Ove had an effect on me in my cowboy perspective through my dad, because Drew would come harvest the fields, and he would take Dad in the tractor with him.
Your dad and I have talked about.
Drew. So that is how that's how Ove plays in my head. That's how he lives on, really, through that. Represented to me a man doing hard work and allowing a little kid that's just standing over there in the turn row waving or smiling. He didn't say, well, that little kid's just going to be a problem for me.
Get out of the way.
He stopped and said, come on, get in here, let me show you. And then Dad did some things similar for me. And then I want to and try to do similar things for my kids or even other just people that want to learn, that want to be a part.
Yeah, and that's what's missed, in my opinion, in our generation, and especially probably the generation right below us that are parents, is the world is so busy.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to learn to say no to some of this stuff, because it wasn't very long ago that Carter was Beck's age.
Yeah.
And now Carter's, in another month, will be living off on his own. And so that time's gone.
Yeah.
We'll never get that time back. Now, it doesn't mean hopefully he's never coming to see us again, but that time as being influential and teaching them and showing them, that time is gone. Now we'll hopefully teach them a lot as they grow into adult state. But that time that you're referring to, when you take a little kid and make them feel a part, goes by too fast. You
don't get many chances to do that.
It goes by too fast.
Yeah. Carter, if you're listening, call your dad once in a while. I think back to the way when I went to college, I kind of disappeared. I mean, I went to tech, I got involved, I'm doing things. For a little while, I called every Saturday, or Mom would call, But eventually, they might go months without hearing from me. And that makes me sad now.
Yeah.
I wish I would have. I live next door to him basically now, and I don't go see him enough. So I'm going to just, Carter, you probably, if you listen, you probably aren't going to be thinking about this. But when you're my age, you're going to look back and say, and when you have your own kids, you're like, oh, I hope they don't just leave.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Well, the good thing
think
we
about
have now is, when you and I were that age in college and moved on, if we had a cell phone, we were told not to use it because it cost so much.
Yeah,
By God, you better be bleeding in the hospital before you call
Yeah,
mom and dad,
that's right.
or a landline. And but nowadays, the good thing is through text message and Facebook
Yeah.
and Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, you can keep up with them in a different way.
Sure.
And that's what I've always told the boys is you don't have to report to me, you don't have to give me a play by play, but just, hey, let me know what's going on. I
Yeah.
just, and Parker, the middle one yesterday, he finished football camp and just, he texted and said, "Hey, camp's over. How'd it go? Went great. Awesome to hear."
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily need long conversations, just the fact that, hey,
It's
this is
that
what's
connection.
going on. Yeah.
It's
And I've always appreciated, the title of your podcast, Cowboy Perspective, because perspective's a big word.
Yeah.
And it's one that should be taught in school from a very young age of what it actually is. But with that, as you were talking about with your kids and that time and everything, and your dad teaching you those things like what Drew taught him, or taking that time. My mother died when I was 20. She was 46. So she was our age
Right.
when she died. If you don't think that doesn't put perspective into you, and each year you have a birthday working up to the age of 46, it just gets a little bit more and a little bit more perspective of what you could miss out on.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's a perspective I have that from my parents, my church family, my community, I don't know when I'm going to die.
You don't?
I can't pick the day. I don't have any clue. It could be now.
Yeah, we may not finish this. I may bet to finish it on my own.
Yeah,
So,
it could happen.
Right.
It's unlikely. Like, it's not a thing I'm dwelling on and worrying about. It just gives me that perspective that I want to be right with the Lord. I want to be doing a thing that is valuable, that adds some valuable thing. I was telling somebody, I got to go over to the dentist office and apologize because I was not a very fun customer to have the other day. That's not right. I don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
I don't want people to have in their mind an experience with Neil Dudley that was, well, that guy's kind of an a-hole.
Yeah.
So I feel
I'm
responsible.
in trouble then.
Well, we all are.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all going to do that occasionally. We're all going to have these times. I like to, for me personally, I like to own them. Go say, stand in front. This is some stuff Dad and Mom made me do.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's where the respect
you
comes
weren't
from.
very respectful, Neil. You go right back in there, look those people in the eye, and tell them, I'm sorry. That's not the kind of person I want to be. I had to do that enough. I still have to do it. I'm like, haven't I learned?
Yeah.
That's not fun either.
No, it's not. I mean, there was a time in life where I was raised on crow.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I mean, that's also what molds you into who you are. I mean,
if you really want some forgiveness from those people for being that kind of person in just, I don't know, a stressful moment, a tough moment, whatever it is, I'm not kind of just naturally that way, but I don't know. I get that way in some circumstances.
Right.
For them to truly forgive me, they have to be really huge people, or I have to go genuinely ask for that. And then the second either one of those truths are there, it's all over. Now we go on. We can be friends. They can say, "Oh man, you know, Neil was a real a-hole."
Yeah.
The craziest thing, he came in and apologized for it.
Yeah.
Right in front of everybody.
Yeah. Well, forgiveness isn't for the ones you're asking for forgiveness for. It's for the person asking for forgiveness. I mean,
that's right.
That's a lot to carry on. And is it worth it? And it goes back to your perspective deal. Is how do you want to live life? Do you want to live it? Well, I shouldn't have done that. Or do you want to just own it, be done with it?
Yep.
Ask if you need to for forgiveness and move on from it. I mean, that's something that I've always been in life is I don't hold on to a lot, and I may get upset or I may even get mad and frustrated at people or at things and situations, but typically when it's over and it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot about, how the Lord says with our sins, He's cast them in the deepest, darkest seas and has forgotten about them. Well, that's pretty tough,
Right.
And
why can't we do that?
Why can't we do that? The world loves to hang on to things that people did, or think they did.
Yeah.
So, getting rid of that makes life a whole lot better.
Well, yeah.
So,
I think I'd encourage everybody to Let everything be a real occurrence before you worry about
React.
it.
You're right.
Like even
Yeah.
Savvy did this. We're at the dentist. She's got to have some dental work done. She needs braces. I'm happy to pay for them, but I'm acting like I don't want to pay. You know, like, I want it cheaper. I mean, that's
Right.
part of the a-hole thing I did. I wish I wouldn't have done. They're charging a fair price. I should just say, great, thank you. Do the best job you can. I appreciate that. Anyways, I'm kind of doing that. That's making her nervous. Now then, we're trying to schedule this appointment. She's got to have a couple of teeth extracted. Might happen right in the horse camp week, and it just spirals her. Oh, I'm gonna be in so much pain. I won't have any fun. I'm like, no, you don't know that.
Right.
You're dreaming that up, that might happen, and it might, but you're not there.
Yeah. What if
don't
it doesn't?
make it up in your mind
Exactly.
that it's absolutely gonna happen that way. I do the same thing. She's a good example of things I do similarly, like, oh, this business meeting's this is gonna be a bad one. They're gonna be unhappy.
Right.
Why think about it like that instead of, we're going to go in here, be a good person, see what happens.
Well, and I need to say this. I talk about Carter seems like more than the other three boys some, but love all of them equally, proud of all of them.
Oh,
the same.
yeah.
But with Carter, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, at 17, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and huge athlete, very successful in what he does. And 17's a tough age.
Sure.
On a good day, if everything's kicking on all 4 cylinders and going well, much less to throw a diagnosis such as that at a kid at that point in their life. And we had lots of talks, and one of those things was, one of these days it was just dreading, okay, I'm gonna have to quit your sports. I'm not gonna be able to do this. I'm gonna only be able to eat this. I'm gonna gain weight and get fat and not be healthy and all those. And son, no, that's not how this works. First off, you have diabetes now, type 1. Now what?
Right.
Are you going to own it, or is it going to own you? That's only his choice. I could tell him, his mother could tell him, everybody could tell him, hey, no, you're going to do fine. But until he chose to own his disease, then it didn't matter.
Like this bystander that feels kind of helpless.
I told him, it's one of these days, if you'll own that and you'll adjust to it and all that, one of these days you're going to be standing up giving a speech somewhere, and you're going to say the best thing that ever happened to me was the day I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And so he went through a lot there in a several month time, but finally realized, hey, I got to own this. Oh. And did, and finished out his high school athletics career, very successful in all that he did and wanted to do. And so I, what you're saying there about the dentist and worrying about it's going to hurt or it's going to take away from this, we cause a lot of our own problems. Yeah. But our kids watch how did Dad react to that when they told him?
Oh, that's the more embarrassing part.
And it's hard
being even in front of. Well, just being an a-hole to the receptionist in front of my kids. I mean, like, they see that.
Yeah.
Now then, they could potentially think that's okay. I think for their personalities, they're more thinking of it like, I don't want to be like that,
Yeah.
And that hurts me to say it. But I also can forgive myself, move on.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I do a lot of stuff right too. So
yeah. Well, and I had always told the boys, do what I say, don't always do what I do. I just tell you that right now. I know what I'm supposed to do myself. I don't always do it, but yeah, and I think that each generation learns from their parents in a way. Some of it's going to probably be more negative, some of it's going to be more positive, and that's just a person becoming who they are. Just because you may or may not have liked something your dad did or the way he acted at times doesn't mean you love him any less.
Right.
And I think our parents know that there were times that they didn't do it right or could have done it different. And, our kids are going to sit one day and say, I shouldn't have handled that way or should have done it differently. But they're going to look back and say, well, Dad kind of did something one time too, but he overcame it, apologized for it, told me not to do that, whatever. And hopefully they'll react the same.
I think so.
Yeah.
You mentioned, did you say 4 kids? 3 kids?
3.
Okay.
I probably said 4.
Well, no, I don't
3.
know. But and how you talk about one more than the other.
Mhm.
Or maybe we're mentioning Carter the most,
Mhm.
but we're going to talk about Beck some. We got to get to that
Mhm.
story a little bit. But like, it's impossible. Or what do you think about this
Mhm.
statement? I think it's impossible to love every kid exactly the same way, exactly the same amount all the
Mhm.
time. And what I guess my dad calls or frames as the conditional love that we experience in
Mhm.
life. There's this unconditional thing that I asked my girls one time, what could you do more to make me love you more? And the only real answer is nothing. Like, I can't love you more. That's the same way God loves us. He
Well,
can't love us more.
well, flip that question. What could you do to make me love you less?
Same thing, nothing.
Nothing.
Right.
I
Yep.
mean, hopefully that's a parent's answer is nothing. I
Well,
think there are some parents that have a list of things,
now,
you know.
yeah, if you change it to like,
Right.
then
There's a difference between like and love.
it moves a little
Yeah.
bit.
There's a
Same for
lot
them.
of people I love but don't really like. So
Yeah, that's right.
and I think that's okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the dynamic of a parent as well,
Yeah.
that love sometimes is interpreted or conveyed differently
Mhm.
per kid or
Mhm.
per
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I don't why would you love them all the same way? You know, Carter and Parker are 12 months and 3 days apart.
yeah.
October 1st and October 4th. And they're opposite as night and day. One's
Yeah.
brown-headed, one's blonde-headed, you know? I mean, it's just they're just opposite as night and day, but they're very close brothers. Now, at this age, boys, I'm sorry, you don't want me to say it, and you probably won't admit it, but they love each other deep,
Oh,
you know, and
yeah.
very protective of one another. Now, they fight
You
like
wouldn't know
brothers.
it if you were with
Yeah,
them, but
yeah,
just try to get in
yeah.
between them.
But, you know, Carter had his personality and his ways, and Parker is more quiet, reserved. Uh, both successful in what they do. Parker's drive just amazes me every time I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, he just has the drive like no other that I respect a lot. But there would be no way to love those boys the same way.
Right.
They're different boys. But I don't think that loving a kid one way and loving another one a different way has anything to do with the amount of love that you have for them. So
And that's the trick as a parent, is to maybe even out loud say it to them sometimes. Like,
Mhm.
hey, I know or you see me spending more time with Savannah because we're riding horses
Mhm.
together, and that's where we connect. That's our thing.
yeah,
But it doesn't mean I like her more or love her
Right.
more. It's a thing we connect. Hey, Coda, you get up and go to workouts with me. And we
Mhm.
both enjoy that time. Like Albany, there's just a different kind of way
Mhm.
I want to have to connect with them.
Mhm.
And I'm a certain person. I like certain things. And when we align on those things, man, it's really fun. Like
Yeah.
they love it. I love it.
Yeah.
We're all having a lot of fun.
But you have to let those 3 girls be who those 3 girls
Yep.
are gonna be, or figure out who they are, and they may be interested in something that absolutely gets on your nerves,
Yeah.
but you know what? You're gonna love them
It's
and
their
support them.
thing.
It's
Yeah.
their thing, you know, you don't want them to be you.
Nope.
You want them to be a combination of you and Stacy and grandparents on both sides and
Mhm.
all of that, so yeah, I don't think you love all kids the same way.
Yep. Tell us a little bit about how somebody could learn to set up a game camera just perfectly to catch them to get bounced off the gator. And
Can we go to a commercial break? Do you have
Yeah,
commercials
that's
in this or
right.
what?
Yeah, we'll
Nobody
change the mood a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. No one can do that.
Yeah.
I will just tell you that. No one can do that. Only the good Lord can set that up
Yeah.
to work the way it was. Sadly, I thought I was out of the way of the camera
Yeah.
until Jamie informed me, no, you weren't.
Hey, just
You're
so
right in it.
anybody is curious, you should get on. Now, is it Jamie's page or your page, or do y'all have one together?
No, it was on, I believe it was on her page.
So
Yeah,
you got to go to Jamie Tunnell's Facebook page and just scroll and find the little post she made of Clint's kind of bailing out and wrecking this little gator after he's been sprayed with was it mesquite spray?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty good. It's kind of funny, and it is amazing that the camera caught it.
It is amazing that the camera caught it. I'm glad it did, because I assure you, when I told Jamie the story when I got home, of what happened and why I was blue,
Yeah.
you really couldn't believe it.
Yeah, sure.
But the camera told the story just like I did,
Yeah.
sadly. So yeah,
Yeah. But that's another great thing. I mean, I appreciate that about your ability. I don't even know. Should that be embarrassing? Is it embarrassing? Does it matter? You're able to just laugh and be like, "Yeah, that
yeah, that
happened.
happened.
And it
Yeah,
is funny,
yeah,
and
it
I'm the
is.
person that everybody's laughing at, and that's okay."
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Eh,
No, it. I think you have to be that way.
yeah, you gotta find, and that's hard. Like that's a thing that 17-year-old kid has a hard time with
Hmm.
being scrutinized
Yeah,
or embarrassed or laughed at.
yeah,
It's hard to have that confidence you need, the self confidence to understand. Really got no bearing on my happiness. Yeah,
yeah,
I am kind of
yeah,
weird.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, and be okay with your
Yep,
weirdness.
that's right. That's really the special piece
Hmm.
of you. Kirsch Design Company is killing it. They're remodeling the house for Stacy and I. And I'll even say it's been fun. They're doing it while we live there. I mean, and this is hard stuff. So I just have to give them a shout out. I appreciate them so much. As a part of my appreciation, I want to tell the TCP Nation, check out Kirsch Design. If you got any remodels or you want to build a new house, I know they can hook you up. All right, so tell me a little bit about Beck, and I want the audience to get a chance to hear a little bit. I don't even fully know what you've been through with him. I
Hmm.
mean, so let's talk about that a little bit. Where do you even start? Like,
Yeah, where do you even start? Uh, so Beck is our third son. He's the youngest of them. There's 13 years difference between Carter and Beck, which is a whole different perspective again,
right?
from raising Carter to raising Beck, um, in a good way,
Sure.
in a good way. But it is totally different when you're a generation apart almost. But so Beck was born with gastroschisis, which is um, I guess to put it in layman's terms, that's basically when your inside organs are on the outside of your body, and so we had no clue of that. So when he came out, um, it that's when we learned of it.
Oh
When
yeah.
he was
I mean,
born,
didn't see it in
and
sonograms
didn't see
or
it in the sonogram at all. He was always turned in those sonogram pictures, and everything else looked healthy and good. And so until he came out, uh, we
man,
didn't have
that's a
any
surprise.
yeah, healthy, weight, length, all those things were just perfectly normal, but whenever he came out, that wasn't. And so he was born in Stephenville, so they had the helicopter en route and almost on the ground in Stephenville before we even knew that, hey, we're in a pretty serious situation.
Yeah.
This kid's going to Cook in Fort Worth, and so we spent a good bit of time at the very first of his story at Cook's. They did the 12-hour operation that first night when he was born and put everything back together. Had to remove some of his intestine and some other part of his intestine to get it all to fit in there correctly. And but you know, once they got him put back together, he didn't really slow down. As a matter of fact, they told us to expect us to be there. Uh, I think 4 months, and we were there just over 3 weeks. I think,
Really?
yeah, it went pretty quick. And so anyways, he recovered from that, did great, did well.
See, I had no clue about that.
Yeah,
Like none.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
this is an illustration of how we really barely know a little old tinny speck of people's lives.
Hmm.
And we live in the same
Yeah,
community. Like, I should have a pretty decent knowledge of you, your
right.
family, and what's
Hmm.
going on. I really just know a little bitty
Yeah,
speck.
yeah. So, uh, we rocked and rolled good. Everything was well. And then just one day, he was about 2 years old. Came up right below his right ear with a little spot that we thought was a mosquito bite at first, and so just kind of kept an eye on it, and it just continued to get a little bit worse and a little bit worse. Finally, in a week or so, it looked like it was infected, and so we took him to the doctor, and said, no, that's not a mosquito bite. We're not real sure what it is. So they sent us to an ENT specialist, which I won't say the name of the doctor, but he was wrong. He
Yeah.
he diagnosed it as cat scratch disease, and we're like, "Oh, we don't own a cat. His grandparents don't own a cat. We don't even like cats." And so, don't know where that would have come from. In order to have cat scratch disease, obviously, you have to have a cat or have been around
Oh,
one.
really?
And so, we came back to our primary doctor with him and said, we need to go somewhere else. And so they sent us to, I believe it was Children's in Dallas, and to a specialist there that we went to see. And we weren't in his office 5 minutes, and he said, "This is above my head. We need to get you somewhere else." And they did that day. And that's when we learned that there was a tumor developing in there in that part of his neck.
Yeah.
And so we went into specialists. We were up at South Lake up there, and they decided, well, a little bit of the backstory on that is what Jamie and I's decision was made was, when my mother came down with cancer, um, I don't think that doctors reacted in the way they should have. Let's treat this. And then when that didn't work, then it was, well, let's take this out. And so my mindset has always just been, if God didn't put it in there, it doesn't need to be in there, take it out. And so that's kind of the direction Jamie and I went. Well, let's don't see what this continues to turn into and see if we
Right.
can identify it. Let's just take it out. And so the doctors agreed with that, especially being at 2 years old. And so we did MRIs and CAT scans to see exactly what we were dealing with. And it just so happened that tumor was setting right below the nerve bundle on the right side of his face that controls the right side nose, the cheek, the mouth, and all of that. And so it wasn't just go in and take it out
Yeah.
and be done. And so we did a surgery in October of 19, I believe it was, and took that one in. Sent it off to pathology. They could not identify it. And so we sent it off, and they said, 2 weeks we ought to have the results back. And we didn't get them back in 2 weeks. We didn't get them back in 3. We didn't get them back in 4. And we kept calling the doctors, and they would call the labs. And anyway, 3 months later,
3 months?
we found out that what happened was the lab had lost it and
Oh,
didn't
my
even ever
goodness.
test it. Well, it came back within that 3 or 4 month period. And so, again, basically repeated the same surgery. They had to go in and use a face monitor, to monitor that nerve, because if they nicked it or cut it, that was the end of the right side of his face, basically. And so we did the surgery again, and it came back. The doctor walked it to the lab
Yeah.
that second time,
Right.
and but still couldn't get a complete diagnosis of, or of what it was. They couldn't identify what it was. And so we did some treatment for a little bit, and everything kind of healed up and cleared up, and thought we were good. And then it came back for a third time, and then did that surgery again, removed it. And when it came back the fourth time, our doctor in South Lake said, we need to get him out of here. We need to get him to somebody that can identify this and see what we're dealing with. So they were able to refer us into MD Anderson at Houston. And, as a parent, nobody likes to see their child in pain or have any problems whatsoever. But whenever you've been through it for 2 years at this point, you're on your fourth go of it. And they can't identify it. They can't figure it out. But when the doctors come in and says we're going to MD Anderson, as a parent, knowing what MD Anderson is,
Mm-hmm.
That will put a lot of things in the perspective, and it'll stop the world in its tracks. And it'll scare the hell out of you. How could it not? I mean, you've got a 3-year-old son at this point that's gone through 4 major surgeries in his life and facing a 5th one.
Now, did it hurt him when the tumor was there?
He never said it hurt. And kids are so resilient, and we often wondered if it developed early, right before he turned 2. So we don't know if it was something maybe he was just used to and thought,
Oh, yeah.
everybody has one. That's the
That's
way
just how
he's
it
supposed to
is.
feel over there.
Yeah.
He never complained about it. And even after the surgeries, he never really complained. I mean, he bounced back real fast every time. But we went to MD Anderson. We spent a good bit of 21 in Houston, in and out of MD Anderson and down there back and forth to Houston. Had a great team of doctors down there. But extremely nerve-wracking, extremely worrisome. Uh, and I chose when all of that started, you know, Jamie and I, just like you and Stacy and all, are big on our faith. Um, we question it a lot sometimes. I think that's what makes your faith grow.
Mm-hmm.
But we decided early on that this problem is bigger than the two of us can handle by ourselves, and so we had just decided we were going to say, hey, we need you to pray for us. And so we did, and people did, but it was a long 3-year process.
Man. Yeah.
But MD Anderson did great. What they ended up doing was going in and basically laying the right side of his face over to get in there to see what it was. I think there were 3, if not 4 surgeons in on that part of the surgery. It was about a 12-hour surgery. But they went in, laid that back, and were able to get around the nerve and get the tumor removed, and then brought in, and they ended up taking out his parotid gland on this side. So they took a big chunk of the right side of his face under the skin out, and then went in. The reconstructive team came in and took muscle out of the back of his neck to reconstruct the right side of his face, so there wasn't hopefully any disformation or anything like that, and then put his face back and stitched him up and sent him to us. So as a parent there, when your 3-year-old son is going back to surgery and the doctors flat out tell you, I mean, we're going to be as absolutely careful as we can, but this thing is sitting right on that nerve bundle. He may not smile again. He may not open his right eye. He may not be able to drink. So for 12 hours, sitting in a waiting room waiting, as much as I would like to say we were praying the whole time, there was a lot of the time we weren't. I mean, you just can't focus enough to do that. So by having the following that we did on Facebook and our friends and our community members here praying in our absence of ability to do it meant a lot to us. But did a great job putting him back together, and he, all the function of his right face is just as it should be. What's interesting is obviously taking out the glands here on this side, that puts him having half his spit that he normally would. So as active as he is, the kid drinks water or something all the time.
Yeah.
And that, they said, obviously that would be the side effect through life is that. But other than that, there hasn't been any issues so far. So
what a story.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if you could call it, I don't think the word story does it justice. I mean, what a
it was a journey.
It
was a journey.
Experience. Okay, so these are the things going through my mind. As you're telling that, I'm like, I mean, can you share, like, what do you think when your child's born and their organs on the outside of their body? I mean, it has to be almost like a war zone or something. It's like,
well, I think in that situation, at least for us, it all happened so fast. There was really no time to think right then of what's going on. Doctors came in and said, here's the problem. We've got to get him fixed. Because of the nature of what it was, his blood sugar was bottoming out. It was pretty
but
serious
you missed
there.
Probably the chance to hold your baby.
We got to hold him.
Okay, good.
I mean, they took him out right as he was born. Well, I'll tell you what's funny is whenever he came out and was born, and the nurse stepped up and said, Dad, do you want to cut the umbilical cord? And I said, sure. When I stepped up and I had the scissors in my hand, she looked down and she said, don't cut that.
Right.
And that's when it really got as to what it was.
Everybody started seeing what's happening.
Yeah. And I think what it was another nurse stepped up and they were both looking at it, and one said, what is that? He said, I think that's a kidney. And so I was like, no, I'm not going to cut that, And so they wrapped him up real quick, took him to the back to another doctor specialist that happened to be there. And that's what they identified that as. And then they came back in the room without him and told us, helicopter's on the way. Here's what's going on. This has to be fixed. And it just all hits you so fast that, you really don't have any time to
Yeah,
think
I
about
mean,
it. I mean,
it's just kind of a shock. Okay, tell me the next step because I can't think of it on my own. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, and then too, as a parent, I think just naturally, any parent, you want to just sit down and cry because you
Hmm.
don't know. You know, you got a newborn child. Are we fixing to lose this child? Is this something that's more common than we know about? And everything's going to be okay? You have no clue. But then, at the time we had Carter and Parker there with us in the room that were super excited about a new little brother. And then you've got to tell them, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I
And that
mean, you have to start now. You just get right face to face with mortality
you do.
of your child, and then ultimately your other children, yourself, your
Hmm.
wife.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just people have been there too.
Yeah.
I mean, healthy babies have been born, but mom's in big trouble.
Hmm. Yeah.
Lots of stuff. Thank God, or I didn't have those
Hmm.
experiences, so I can't speak of them, but I've heard about them, so I
Hmm.
know there's those realities out there. That's some stuff I hope in these conversations people have a chance to say, okay, well, I'm going to just at least spend a little time mentally thinking, if that happened to me, I know I won't know what to do.
Hmm.
How do I want to be?
And I think that for us, a lot of it went back to that faith and we both had, Jamie and I have had different situations in life happen that the faith was all we had, especially going through what we did with mom, that, faith was all we had with that. So I think you just have to give that to God and say, okay, God, I can't do this. And in that situation, I have no idea what's coming. I don't even know what to expect. Am I going to think the worst? And so what we both did was just say, God, whatever your
Mhm.
plan is what we're going to
We
follow.
can make it through it.
And now that didn't mean we didn't
Sure.
worry and have our emotional times and all of that. But I think at the same time, we were both fortunate in the way we were raised and all in our faith is to know that where we were going to be in this, we weren't going to be mentally stable. We weren't going to be emotionally stable. Probably weren't going to be physically stable at times. So knowing that and knowing we can't handle this
Oh,
on
yeah.
our own.
Well, it makes me want to give Jamie a big high five because
I
I
don't see
can't.
how she did it.
Well, right. I mean, a mom
Hmm.
gave birth, and now there's just such a. I
Well, I
mean,
mean,
there's such an experience, a bond, all of that, and then that
yeah,
happens. There's this
she
whole
held back
recovering.
there in Stephenville, and then our flight crew showed up, come in. It's kind of funny later looking back. We were like, we had no idea how you put a baby on a helicopter. I mean, a big person you put on a gurney and they fly up there. So we
They just
thought the
hand
same
them to
thing with a newborn.
somebody.
But the flight crew comes in with this full size gurney and a glass box in the middle of it, and there's your little son sitting in there. But they did let Jamie hold back, and they let Carter and Parker hold it back and myself before we left Stephenville with him. But then the flight crew came in. That was a God thing. The way they all circled up and prayed
Yeah.
before they left with him, that kind of thing. But I drove to Fort Worth from Stephenville that day. I didn't follow the helicopter; they were much ahead of me. But they said, "Here's where we'll be when you get here, and here's the plan." Jamie stayed in Stephenville,
Mm-hmm.
and as a mom, I mean, dads, we love our kids, but they're just a mom bond
Yeah.
that can't even be compared, and we don't, as men don't understand it, never will. But I just don't see how she was able to stay there
Well, they're just so
in
tough.
Stephenville without me,
Yeah.
without anyone. So except sitting in that room.
Yeah.
So, uh, so yeah, it was quite an experience. I would say even more so for Jamie.
Yep.
Then I went up there. My dad went with me, fortunately, and so then I think it was around 10:30, 11, maybe closer to midnight that night when they actually started the surgery. So we sat there all night waiting. But yeah, we can't as human beings, we can't do that stuff. People that don't have a faith of some kind, I just flat don't see
Well,
how they
they
survive
have a
it.
whole lot harder time.
I
They
mean,
don't
yeah,
have any. They've just got no thing
yeah.
to be their friend.
I mean, yeah.
When there's not something else, somebody else to
And
do it.
having a faith never doesn't mean that it's all going to be okay and that
Yeah.
it's going to turn out the way you want it to, or that you're not going to have emotional times. It just means that, I mean, you're able to put that off to something bigger to take care of while you're being human.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Wow. I mean, I just think, man, what a financial burden. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it
Insurance
makes you
is not
think,
your friend.
yes, you think
So
there's insurance there, so that's an important thing
mhm,
to think about. You can't predict what's happening. If you can
mhm.
have some insurance, that's going to be a good idea. But getting the insurance to pay isn't
Yeah.
always that easy. I
No.
mean, so it's just like you've just been through this journey that's so dynamic.
Mhm,
It's just the very obvious fear for Beck and
mhm,
dealing with the dynamics of how you think about what if he dies and
mhm,
these kind of things.
mhm.
To there's still real life out here.
Yeah, I gotta work.
There's still business,
Right.
there's still bills, there's still
Mhm,
all this stuff. I mean,
mhm,
it is a pressure cooker.
mhm. It is. It
So,
is.
high
But
five for really living through it still
mhm,
today. I mean,
mhm.
even if the day you have kids, you've just entered a pressure cooker.
Yeah. No, yeah, on a
Much
good day.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we both realized too that there, sadly, Neil, as you well know, there are a lot of people in our generation that don't have a faith.
Mm.
They either weren't raised up in the church like you and I were, or raised with the faith. Period. And so we understood after we had some time to digest it and all, that by putting that out on Facebook, asking for our friends, community members, and everybody, hey, we need your prayers and we need them now. That the ones that didn't have a faith were watching.
Yeah.
Okay, they're fixing to fall apart. They're fixing to blame this, on God or whatever the case may be. And so, there's pressure in that,
Yeah.
and it's okay to have a strong faith and still fall apart, and I think that's where their misconception of, okay, if I'm a Christian and have a strong faith that life's easy. And if I
Oh,
fall apart, I'm not doing it right.
yeah.
No, that's fully expected and no shame in it.
Sure. I've said it on here and I stole it from somebody, but really above the entry door of every church should be messed up people only.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
you're perfect, you don't need
Well,
church.
yeah. And that's what, the thing of it, oh, you go to church, you must think you're perfect. No, I go to church because I know I'm not. Far
Yeah.
from it.
That's
Far
100%
from
true.
it. So, yeah. So,
Speaking of church,
Mhm.
where do you get the tickling the ivories from?
that is a God-given talent. And there isn't a Sunday that I sit down and do it that I don't think, oh, why me?
Yeah.
Of
Well,
all people.
So did you just tell me about the first time you hit a key? Like, do you remember it?
Oh yeah, I was 5 years old. Like every kid, their mother signed them up to take piano lessons, and so I was 5. I'd started kindergarten, and LaRue Bailey, which was the pianist at the First Baptist Church in Blanket, was who taught me, and so I signed up. Wilma Lee here in Comanche was my kindergarten teacher
Yeah.
at that time, and she would walk me down to the auditorium, and I would sit on the old Wurlitzer piano, and Miss Bailey would teach me what I needed to know. And she was a very sweet lady, but a very stern lady. I mean,
Yeah.
she was one of those of the greatest generation, born in 22 or 24, somewhere in there. So she was just she had a different style of teaching,
Yeah.
and but very stern. And so that went on until I was in the 3rd grade. And then one day, Miss Bailey went to my mother and said, "Look, don't bring this kid back." Said he has no interest in learning how to play the piano. He is wasting my time and your money, and just don't bring him back. And so Mom asked me that night. She said, "Is that true?" And I said, "Absolutely.
Yeah.
Please
Right.
don't let me go."
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say a side note there. When she said my time and your money, my piano lessons cost $1.50 a piece.
Yeah.
And so, my parents may have $150 at the most in my
Yeah, right.
training
Sure.
of how to play the piano. But anyways, my best friend, Josh Frey, who was Miss Bailey's grandson, was also taking it at the same time. He didn't quit. I did. And so the next year in school, I don't really remember, we were out on the playground, something, and he made a comment of, "Hey, I finished that book we were in at piano." And I thought, he's always going to be ahead of me in sports because he loved it. I didn't.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I can't let him win everything. So I went back to my mom and I said, "Look, I need to finish that book. That way Josh and I are even."
Yeah.
And she said, well, I'll ask, but I don't think she'll let you come back. And so she talked to Miss Bailey, and she said, if he's serious, he come back. And so I went back. I was about halfway through it. So finished the book in, a couple of months' time or whatever it was. And the day I finished it and she signed it off, she said, what now? And I said, well, I'm done. I did what I came to do.
Yeah.
And she said, no, you're not. And I was 10 at the time. And she said, I want you to start playing with me at church on Sunday. And I said, nope, can't do it. Not even, can't do it. And she said, yeah, you can. And she was 8 when she started playing for church.
Yeah.
And her grandfather would give her the music minister in their church. She was raised out in way far in West Texas. And she'd work on them all week, be ready by Sunday, play through them. And so she had told me that story many times over the years. And so I was 10, so I was older and was behind time, I guess, in the way she saw it. So she gave me the hymns, and we worked on them that week. And she said, meet me at the piano at 9:30 Sunday morning. So I did. That first Sunday I played was in July of 1990, so 33 years as a church pianist now, I guess. But it was awful. God, it was awful. I mean, it's a wonder.
Did you know it was awful?
Yeah, oh Lord, yes. I knew it was awful before anybody else knew it was awful. And I thought, man, they're going to not even let me come back. And so she, of course, heard that was good. You did a great job, all this. And I'm like, no. But so the next Sunday came around, and so 3 or 4 Sundays that I did that, and it was just nerve wracking. At 10 years old, I wasn't even paying attention in church, much less leading the congregation with the music on the piano. And so I told her, I said, look, I can't do this anymore. It's just nerve wracking. She said, no, you're going to continue on. Well, at that time, the keyboard and electric pianos were a big thing, and our church, for whatever reason, had bought one. But it just sat over there. And so Miss Bailey played by ear. I was playing somewhat. And then we had another lady named Lorene Stanley that played the organ, and she played by ear. And so we put the keyboard up next to the piano. And Miss Bailey took back over the piano and Lorene on the organ, and then I would be on the keyboard. And I could do that better. And so funny story, when I graduated college and went off to start life, I moved at that point, and so the church, I played both churches. The Methodist church met at 9 in the morning for their worship, so I would play their worship service at 9, and then I would walk across the street and play the Baptist church service at 11. Did that for many, many years. And so then when I moved, life changed, and so the church did a little, because I'd been playing 10 years at that point. And so they gave me a plaque and all this. And when I went up to accept it, I told them, appreciate this, but I do want y'all to all know what I really think about you. And I said, I think all of you are nothing but a bunch of liars. And of course, eyes bugged, chins dropped.
You got everybody's attention.
It got real quiet. And I said, let me explain why. And I said, for years when I first started this, as I was going out the church door or whatever, y'all would all pat me on the back, hug my neck, kiss me on the cheeks. And God, Clint, it just sounded so good. We appreciate what you're doing. It was wonderful. And I mean, first off, I knew that it didn't. And I said, but second, what you guys didn't realize is while the piano didn't turn off, the keyboard would. And if we got into a song that I didn't know, I would just reach over and turn the keyboard off, but continue to play to keep up with people singing, playing the song at the same time, all of those things. I said, so there were many a Sunday that you never heard the keyboard, playing. And so, of course, most of them, I think, laughed after that. But it was that encouragement, I think goes back to the confidence, is it did not sound good. There's no way it could have. And then sometimes it didn't even sound because it was turned off. But those people every Sunday made sure that I knew it sounded great and I did a good job and all of that. And so I think that was one of the big things in life that's
a cowboy perspective. People did that for me in different things.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, my mom, other cowboys. I totally was terrible, but they were proud. It did sound good to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew you were putting the effort in. You were up there doing it. They want you. They don't know any other way to say it other than, man, that sounded great.
Mm-hmm.
What they're really trying to do is tell you, I'm proud of you.
Keep doing it.
Keep it up.
Doing it. Yeah.
I know what you're doing is not easy.
Yeah. Well, somewhere along the way, God gifted me with the ability to play by ear. And LaRue always told me, Miss Bailey, I call her LaRue because as we grew older, we just became good friends. But she always said, this is from the Lord. This gift is from God, and He gave it to you. He can take it away from you.
Yeah.
And she always made sure I understood that that's what that was. This was not Clint Tunnel.
Oh, you're really
look
good.
what I learned.
You're
Yeah,
just
no,
special.
this was not one of those things that I had done. It was strictly a gift. And the older I've gotten, I fully understand that. But she never, as her gift, and she always told me, she said, "You'll never get paid for doing this." And at first I thought, I guess churches don't pay their piano players to play the piano. But what she meant by that was this is your gift. You're giving it back. You won't be paid. In other words, if they try to, you won't take it. And that's what she meant. And so, that's the mindset that I've always taken too, is that, hey, this is I got to give it back.
Yeah.
And so she taught me a lot more than I realized that she did in life. Sadly, she was a, and even look on her story, she was a diabetic, very severe diabetic, and she went blind in her right eye when I was in early, probably, I don't know, 8th grade freshman. Continued on. It was just one of those things, Clint, I'm blind in this eye. I can't see what, am I going to stop? So she kept driving herself to church with her one good eye.
Yeah.
And playing that piano and doing her things. And sadly, just right after I graduated high school in October of 98, she had a diabetic spell that she didn't recover from. And so what I wouldn't give,
Oh, sure.
is for one more time to sit down and do it again. But
did she see? Did you know? Like, was it just like magic one day you realized you could play by ear, or was that always kind of something?
I didn't know what playing by ear meant.
Well, I don't either. So
yeah.
what does that even
Well, I
mean?
really don't know. I guess it means you can just sit down and play.
Yeah,
that's what I. That's
so
what I.
Can you hear a song and then play it?
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time. So no, I didn't realize that. At the beginning, I was straight from the hymn book, straight from the book LaRue and I were playing out of. But then as time went on, I realized I'm not even using that. And when I play now, especially at church, I'll have the hymn book open, and that's more so that if I get off daydreaming while I'm playing and where are they even at, I always tell the preacher or the song leader, don't tell me which verses you're singing, just tell me how many times I need to play it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how that goes. But no, it would never discuss, hey, I'm going to teach you how to play by ear, or you're learning to do it by ear. It just occurred.
Yeah.
I would sit and watch her. The way LaRue's hands would go across the keyboard was just amazing. And it was from one end to the other. And she always said, if God put 88 keys on this keyboard, if he didn't want them all played, he would have made it much shorter. And that's kind of the way I see it is, those notes, there's no need to leave any of them out.
Somebody wants to hear that note.
And so I play from one end to the other and enjoy doing that. But it was never said, oh, you're playing by ear. It was always, this is a gift.
Yeah.
This is a gift from God.
So how many songs do you think you could just sit down and play if you just took time and just started playing? No books or anything?
I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't even know.
That's funny, isn't
it?
Like, you don't even know the song till somebody says, play that one. You're like,
yeah, and some of them I can sit down and pick out, and some of them are like, okay, I'll have to get back to you on that one. I need a little time. The thing about playing by ear is, and I've always said this, when someone says, I'll play this song for me, I always tell them it may not be the same as what you heard the last time. And very seldom do I play a song the same way twice, because it's, when you play by ear, it's a lot of emotion in what that song means to you. If I'm happy-go-lucky that day and everything's been great, I'm going to play the same song a certain way. If it's been a rough day, if I'm sad, if I'm upset about something, it's going to be played entirely different. If I need to just meditate, it's going to be played entirely different.
Do you do that? Is that a place where, is the piano a place you sit down to just
wind down?
Yeah.
Yep.
You do it every day?
Not every day like I used to, but yeah, I mean, I would say 90% of the time, I may sit down and play one song. I may sit down and play 5 or whatever the case may be. But yeah, most days wind down that way.
Yeah. I think Stacy's dad was similar with the guitar. Like she says, and whether this is absolutely true or not, I don't know. It was her perspective. It was how she saw it.
Mhm.
Like, if he couldn't sleep at night, if he was stressed out over whatever,
Mhm.
everybody has them. He'd be in there playing the guitar.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that music is a release, is a place to go for a lot of people. Me, I kind of like to go saddle a horse and ride
Mhm.
around.
Yeah,
That's
the same.
similar, some kind of. I just hope everybody can find that because
Yeah.
it's really valuable.
Yeah, and they need to. I mean, that's something that people need to have that ability to release and need to know what it is. And it may be working in the yard, it may be
Yeah.
riding a horse, it may be playing the piano, strumming the guitar, whatever the case may be, but people have got to figure that out. Because if you don't have it, it's a lot to keep in.
Yeah. And I'm scared we get to looking at these phones too much to ever
Mhm.
find that.
Yeah.
You know?
That takes that place,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Some
yeah.
of it's go sit under a tree.
Mhm.
Just get out there in the
It's
world
okay
a
to do
little bit.
nothing sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's when you often not necessarily learn a lot, but at that time that your mind is not necessarily going a certain direction, and you can put to perspective some of the things that you've
Yep.
been brushing off or not taking care of. So,
Yep.
yeah. So anyway, playing the piano, that's kind of just how that took place. Is one day it just kind of all hit that, hey, I'm doing what, and it was really after LaRue died that I realized what happened. We think we know what's going on in life. We don't have a clue.
Yeah,
We
that's
think,
right.
"Oh, man, look at my plan, look what I'm doing," and we don't have a clue what we're even doing. I mean, we're just a part
Yeah.
of the plan that's there for us, and even though we think we know what the plan is, we don't. But it just all occurred to me was, at 10 years old, God knew the day LaRue was gonna die,
Yeah.
and he knew that a church pianist, I don't call myself a pianist, I say I play the piano, but, is a dying trade.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to play, but to be able to play with a congregation singing behind you is totally different. And so, looking back after several years after LaRue died, that, oh, that's what you were doing. Thank you,
Yeah.
for not letting me know, because I'd have probably quit. Lord, I can't do that.
Yep.
So he kind of snuck it in there. But you know, not many people know this about me. Some do. Uh, Nothing I tell, but I guess everybody will know now. But back in
Well, hey, wait, just so you know, not everybody's gonna listen to this.
you're kidding. I thought
Yeah,
everybody listened to this.
that's right.
So I guess back in about 2006, it got to where when I was playing and people would sing, I couldn't hear the piano anymore, and I had noticed that things were changing as far as being able to hear the piano and what notes I used to hear, and especially on the high end of the piano. And so uh, I finally went to the doctor and said something's up, and so ended up at Scott and White in their audiology department, and sure enough, something was, and I had lost significant amount of hearing in both ears, and so we did the test, and I said, look, I've got to hear, and I said, I cannot see and still do what I do, uh, but if I can't hear it, it's not going to work. And so they went in and did what I felt like was a bunch of tests to figure out exactly where I was and what was going on, and the damage that I had in my hearing was permanent in both ears. So, said it's not coming back. We can try to correct it with the technology that we have. And so they did. And, my biggest deal, so I was fitted with hearing aids when I was 26. I'm 75% deaf in my right ear and 45% deaf in my left ear. And whenever you play the piano by ear,
Right.
that's something important to have. And so, I just said, okay, God, if this is a changing point, but I went back to LaRue. LaRue went blind in her right eye,
Mhm.
and she did it.
Yeah.
So, I went, I guess, almost legally deaf in one ear. So that means you're going to give it up? Is that the devil slipping in and saying, well, I got you. You did all
Yeah.
this for years, but here you are young and still got lots of years, but I'm going to take it away from you. Well, no, that wasn't going to happen. And so I went to Scott and White in their facilities down there, and I said, look, it's got to sound perfect. It can't be down in a barrel. It can't sound like you're in a hollow room. It can't whistle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we went through a lot of different designs and types of hearing aids and found one at that point that was just right. And what was funny was after I started wearing them, I didn't realize how noisy the world was.
Yeah.
And it's like it was annoying. And he
Yeah.
kind of said, you're going to hear things you hadn't heard in a while. One of them that I heard was when we pulled out of Scott and White. We got down to the intersection, and my wife was driving and I said, "What's that clicking noise?" She said, "I don't hear it." I said, "How do you not hear that?" And so
Turns
got
out it's the blinker.
got down to the next intersection. And I heard it at every one, and it was the blinker. I
Yeah.
didn't know the blinker made noises.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. So I don't wear them all the time simply because the world is a noisy place
Yeah.
if you have good hearing. But I definitely do wear them when I play. So,
Yeah.
but
Well, I mean, that's another. I appreciate that. Some people would be embarrassed. Oh, look at that. He got a hearing aid. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, some people wouldn't wear them, but like you just like, whatever. It's,
Yeah.
it's
Well, it was very
helps
nice
me do something I love.
to be diagnosed because, for a whole life it had been, well, you have selective hearing.
Yeah.
No, I don't either. I sure don't. I might have some, but
Yeah, sure.
but
We all have
most
a
of this
little
is
bit.
legal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my goodness, man, this has just been a great experience for me. You've said a lot of things that made me think about stuff a little differently, or at least remind me, oh yeah, that's how I want to think about it. So thanks for coming, doing it. Thanks for really, I mentioned you being a servant heart and the stuff you do in the community. Nobody asks you to, you just do it to be a part, to help, to make things better, to be a productive piece of the community. I see it. Other people see it. It's not about toot the Clint tunnel
right.
horn here, but you do it, and I appreciate it. And we all got to do that kind of stuff.
I appreciate that. And it here again, it goes back to setting that example for the generation. It was set for us. I mean, you look at the people right here in this town, Neil, of their example that we have to follow that have gone on in just the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
We've lost a lot of good people in our community. And I was asked one time after Jim Wilkerson passed away, what are we going to do with all these people going? Well, we're either going to step up and do it or it ain't going to happen. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So but it's our responsibility to set that example for our kids and the next generation. My grandparents and my parents set it for me. There are times that you do things in life that you really don't want to do, but they have to be done to keep the wheels turning. For not just for you. I mean, in your benefit, for other people.
Like do stuff for other people.
Yeah, to make other people successful.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think I get most frustrated at in life is people's how people take the success of other people as a threat.
Right.
And cannot be happy for someone else's success, whether it's something they're doing the same or if it's something totally different. Success threatens people, and
we can be in the same game and both have success.
Be successful,
and
why not?
It is. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, there's a little jealousy in there, and like I think you might not deal with it as much as maybe others because you just have that that you don't compete with people in your mind and just kind of naturally. But when you have this kind of competitive personality, or I don't know, some just piece of who you are, then you get a little jealous when somebody else is shining and you're not. Like that's okay to have that, but learn to let it go.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to
be
stay jealous about it or be threatened. They're not stealing my potential future success because they're having it. Actually, they probably, I want to feel the same as them. I can be happy they have that feeling or they're able to, and in some cases, like we all just know this little speck of people's lives, they're not even happy.
Yeah.
They're having this perceived success and they're not happy with it.
And often we see the success is all we see. We don't realize the sleepless nights and all of that. One of my very favorite business sayings to tell people, especially that are starting something new or whatever, is sometimes you eat chicken, sometimes you eat feathers. And there's a lot of truth in that, but very seldom do the people see when you had to eat the feathers.
Oh yeah.
And so, so the success is what people see and not the struggle. And I want to do that. Well, you're welcome to be successful, but it's going to be in the trench before it's up on the top.
Even in your journey to playing the piano, you were a 12, 13, 30 year overnight success.
I mean,
you had
exactly.
to spend everybody start waking up realizing it. Anybody listening that wants to be somewhere, it's going to take discipline, pain, suffering, time.
Yeah.
Like, you don't just say, I want this,
Hmm.
and then get it delivered. I mean, maybe that happens, but I don't think it's even very valuable if it does.
Yeah. Well, anything worth having never came easy. We know that. But and LaRue used to always tell me when we were playing together at church, especially, she would say, it's okay for us both to make mistakes. We just can't make them at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's truth to that in the world. I mean, we're all going to make mistakes. If we all made them at exactly the same time, it wouldn't be a good place. But if we can
Right.
cover each other's mistakes
Yeah.
in some way, if
That's a great partnership right
yeah,
there.
if you're on hard times, then I need to step in and say, "Hey, Neil, what can I do? I may not know your job. I may not know anything about you." And it's sometimes it's so simple to me. Is all that person needs is the other person come up and saying, "Hey, what can I do?"
Mhm.
Honestly, you can do nothing, but just the simple fact that you
Yep.
asked me turns this situation
Gives
around
me a
a
little
little
bit
bit.
of
Yeah,
helps me keep my legs under me.
yeah. So,
We never did really. I mean, we mentioned your mom and dad. We
mhm.
mentioned your grandparents. You got any siblings?
I have an older brother and a younger sister. So I was the middle child. That's probably where some of the weirdness came from. Both older brother and younger sister were all-star athletes, very successful in what they did. Proud of them for that. Glad it wasn't me. Uh, but but yeah, I have an older brother and that's a couple of years older, and then my sister is about 4 years younger
Yeah.
than I am. So
Well, I think it's. Are y'all close? I mean, just like, so when you were kids, were you
mhm.
close? Are you close now?
Yes, I
Being
mean
different. I
it's
mean, I'm real different from my brother.
sure.
So some people might, and that's no secret.
Hmm.
Anybody that knows both
Oh
of us
yeah,
is like, it's blood night and day.
yeah.
But
Kurt
man,
and I are different as night and day, kind of like Carter and Parker. I always tell people that I'm the younger, better looking brother. That's how you tell us apart. And but no, we were always different as night and day. Kurt didn't like to work as a kid. I did for whatever reason. I just loved going out and doing it. Kurt did not. He would figure out. He'd spend 45 minutes trying to figure out how to pull the rope out of the lawnmower instead of just starting it and mowing it in 10. And so when we were kids, but we were just always night and
different.
day different,
Yeah.
and fought brothers do. My sister and I, there was some age difference there, 4 years or so, but we fought like brothers and sisters did. But let's go back to perspective. Uh, I had just graduated high school whenever mom was diagnosed, so I was 18. Uh, knew everything there was to know at that time. My sister was 14,
Yeah.
and my brother was 20. My dad was 46, 47, and so life got real
Right.
then. And at that time the diagnosis was good with mom. We thought, okay, it was in her kidneys, and so they were going to take out the right one, and so we felt like that was going to fix the problem. We went in the day before Thanksgiving and took in 98 and took that kidney out, and we were going to she was going to do some chemo through January and keep going, and so yeah, we thought, hey, this is great. And part of where I get my way from was mom never left school when she was doing that. When she died 2 years later, a lot of her students didn't even know she was sick,
Yeah.
and she just continued that on. But then came back in April, or no, came back in September of that next year, 99, in her bladder, and we took out that the day after Thanksgiving in 99, and then in Easter weekend of 2000 is whenever we were eating lunch, and her words began to slur. And so she went back into her doctor the next week, and that's whenever discovered it went to her brain and was inoperable. And so the doctors, said 6 months. And I remember one of our preachers at that time was with us at the hospital when we got that news, and he asked, what do we pray for? And my response was, we need to pray for the acceptance of the fact that the answer to our prayer may not be the one that we want. And we knew, I mean, and why would you want
Oh,
it
yeah.
to go
I
longer
mean,
if it wasn't.
that's right.
And she lasted about 2.5 months, I think, instead of 6. But so my brother and sister and I grew up fast, and all of our petty differences went to
That's
the
nothing
side.
will pull you closer quicker than
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, my brother had just he was out of high school a couple of years and was well onto his career at that time and doing well and very successful. And I was in college at that time. And my sister was a sophomore in high school, and so yeah, that pulled us all together. So my dad and my brother and sister and I are extremely close these days. We have our differences just like every family does, but when we do have those differences, we deal with them and it's
Yeah.
over.
None of those differences ever trump
Yeah,
the connection.
no, they
Yeah.
don't. They don't. So
That's a mic drop right there. Everybody that has any issue with their family or friends or close relationships, and look, you're not going to have that many. Like
Yeah.
really close relationships in your life don't number in the, I don't even know, hundreds.
Yeah.
I mean, so don't let something trump that
Get
relationship.
over that. I mean, I mean, I've had things I've had to get over, and people have had to get over things I've done. That's just the way the world is. But I'd a whole lot rather have them flawed than not have them at all.
Oh yeah.
And so again, go back to perspective. What's worth more, them here or being mad over something that really
Being
doesn't
right.
matter?
Like
Yeah,
that's what the only
Yeah.
reason you ever get mad is because you want to be right.
right. And how yeah.
what's more important?
What is that? Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Clint, thanks for the time.
Absolutely.
Jeez, what
Enjoyed
a great
it.
conversation. What a great, really journey through life. You're already, you have lived, you are living, and thanks for sharing it with everybody. Everybody, thanks for listening. Like the time you spend listening, it's valuable. It's like you don't get it back. You don't know.
Right. Right.
Nobody knows how valuable
You
their
only get
time
it
is.
once.
So, thanks for listening. Come back next time. We'll be talking to somebody else, and hopefully there'll be some perspective in there you can put to work in your life.